Hey friends, welcome in. My name is Autumn and today I want to talk about my top books of 2024. This past year I read 50 books and today I want to talk about my top 5 books as well as 3 honorable mentions. These books did not necessarily come out in 2024, but I did read them in the year of 2024. I'll be totally honest, I did not do my best with keeping track of what I rated these books in the moment. So if you watched a vlog and I gave it a star rating and then I give it somewhat of a different rating in this video, it'll be okay. That is my mistake. That's on me. I'm still new at documenting the books I talk about on YouTube and also keeping track of all of that. Next year in 2025 and beyond, I'll do better. I tried so hard to pick one book for my top spot in 2024 and honestly I could not pick. So my top spot is going to be shared between 2 books. They're 2 totally different vibes, but we will get to that when we get there. I would say that those top 2 books in that number 1 spot are my number 1s. The honorable mentions and then the other 3 books are pretty much interchangeable. I really enjoyed all of these books and I just really wanted to share them with you guys. So go ahead and buckle in and let's get started. The first honorable mention I want to talk about is The Wrath and the Dawn by Renee Audier. This book follows our 2 main characters, Khalid and Shazi, and Shazi is the first volunteer to marry Khalid, who is the Caliph of Khorasan. He is a monster, he's kind of cursed, and any wife that he ever takes before Shazi never survives their wedding night. And Shazi, for the first time, is a volunteer to become his wife, and she survives her first night, and then the second, and then the third. This story is beautifully written. I really enjoyed the storytelling in here, the magic. It was a very refreshing read. I loved our 2 main characters, and I do love how the deeper we get into the story, those masks that Khalid has are slowly starting to crack, and we see him and like all of his raw just sweetness, honestly. And I think that he is probably one of the best love interests I've read. I really do enjoy Shazi too. I think that she is a character that I could understand the things that she was doing and her motives and her conflicts. Once the story continues to progress, she starts to have feelings for Khalid and then she's very conflicted, especially for the reasons why she chose to be a volunteer in the first place. I just think that this book was so fun. It was a surprising read. It wasn't even because I thought that it was going to be a bad story. It was just so much better than I could have imagined it to be. I believe I gave this book 4.5 stars. I think that's what I'm feeling in this moment after several months later of reading this book. I think I said I had 3 honorable mentions, but I only have 2. I don't know why I thought I had 3, but the second one is The Teacher by Frida McFadden. So The Teacher by Frida McFadden was the first book I read from this author. It is a phenomenal psychological thriller. I had so much fun with this book. I also listened to the audiobook and I really think that the audiobook enhanced my experience with this book. It follows our main character Eve, although there's a couple of other perspectives that are littered throughout this story. But for the most part, we follow Eve. She has a good life. She gets up every day, gets a kiss from her husband, and then heads off to teach math at the local high school. All is as it should be, except last year, the high school was rocked by a scandal with one of the students. Her name is Addie at its center. And this year, Eve is dismayed when she has Addie in her class. Addie can't be trusted. She lies, she hurts people, she destroys lives. At least that's what everyone says. But nobody knows the real Addie. Nobody knows the secrets that could destroy her, and Addie will do anything to keep it quiet. I loved the twists and turns in this book. What immediately pulled me into this story was that prologue. This is definitely not a spoiler because it's in the prologue, but in the prologue, somebody was digging a hole and burying a body. Like that just pulled me into this story. Enough said. Loved it. I loved the writing style. Every character was fleshed out enough to give you enough information, but to still leave them a little bit of a mystery. This book was so good. And I love the play on the word, the teacher. I just thought that that was so clever. But for the teacher, I believe I gave this book 5 stars. I may have taken off half a star or like a star. I'm not quite sure, but because of the dynamics of some of the characters in here, I should have known based off of the title what to expect, but I would look at some trigger warnings if you're sensitive to some types of relationships with underaged people. So now we're going to get on to the books in the list But really, these are just all of my top favorite books. I would just say that the honorable mentions and everybody except for the last 2 books on this list that I'm going to mention are all my favorites. But the next book up is You Made a Fool of Death with Your Beauty by Akwaeke Emezi. This was the first book I read in 2024. It just kicked off my 2024 reading year and set the bar so high for every single book that came afterwards. So this book follows our main character, Heyy. She is learning to love again. She is slowly starting to date after a tragedy struck and she lost her husband, and she is slowly starting to get out there into that dating world with the help of her friend Joy. She meets this one guy, they slowly start to date. He invites her to go home to his home island. He goes, and little does she know that they're going to be staying with his father, and Heyy finds herself conflicted with the feeling she's starting to feel with the father. I think Akwaeke Emezi captures grief and how raw and real and tough life can be when you're put in situations like our main character was put into, the guilt that she's feeling, and then having to think about her past partner and what would he do in these moments. The life lessons in this book were just so beautiful, so raw, and so real. Heyy is an absolutely phenomenal character. I believe I gave this book 4.5 stars. The reason I had taken off a star or half a star, there was a lot of language in this book that I felt like it was a little unnecessary, but it definitely didn't take away from my reading experience. And I do feel like the longer I have gone without reading this book, you know, it's been a year since I picked up this book and read it, those parts don't stick with me. That is something I just wanted to mention. The next book, I'm gonna say books because it's 2, it's a series. I read both of these books and I don't feel right mentioning one without mentioning the other because they were both 5-star reads. I just don't want them to take up 2 different spots on this list. It is Malice and Valor by John Gwynne. They're the first 2 books in the Faithful and the Fallen series. I could not love this series more than I do. This series follows a wide cast of characters. It's essentially a story of good versus evil. There was a god war that happened thousands of years ago, and it was prophesied that this war would happen again. Malice is the start, you know, the little seeds of that god war happening again. Valor follows that, and we're continuing to grow into this god war. And oh my goodness, the writing style in this is beautiful. The magic system in this is just so vast and so creative. And one thing I love about John Gwynne's writing is the way he introduces this fantasy world or certain types of objects or creatures or places in this world. He'll drop it on page 100, but then he kind of gets you introduced to it, and then when it becomes more significant, he'll mention it maybe 50 pages later or 100 pages later, then give you a much bigger description of what that topic is. I also very much enjoy the chosen one tropes. Those are just my all-time favorites. I also really enjoy good versus evil stories. I just love them so much. So this story has everything that I do love in fantasy, so it's not surprising that both book 1 and book 2 ended up on my list. The next book on this list is Beasts of Prey by Anya Gray. This book was also pretty surprising for me. Not that I was expecting not a good book, not that I was expecting not to enjoy this book by any means, but this book just exceeded my expectations. I believe this book was a 5-star or maybe a 4.5-star read, but I loved it. I think I was a little nervous about this book when I first went into it because it's YA, and I know sometimes with me with YA, they just read very juvenile. This author has a very beautiful writing style, and I cannot wait to continue this series, and I can't wait to read more from this author. This story follows 2 perspectives. We have Kofi and Ekon. Crap, my battery is dying. Hang on. Ekon is a warrior in training for the elite Sons of the Six, and he is tasked to stop Kofi, who is an indentured beastkeeper at the infamous Night Zoo. She unleashes a power that she did not know that she possessed, and the only way that she can fix her mistakes and to save her mother is to go into the greater jungle, find the Shatani, which is this mythical snake creature, and bring him back to the Night Zoo in order to save her mother and to kind of right her wrongs. So the 2 of them end up working together, but of course they don't ever tell each other of the plans that they have. They just are like, oh yeah, you know, I'll be your buddy if you help me find the Shatani. But as we get deeper and deeper into the greater jungle and also deeper and deeper into the book, a lot more conflict ends up happening. Our 2 main characters slowly start to develop feelings for each other, and I just think that this book is so beautifully written and beautifully done. I feel like it captures young love in a very beautiful and unique way. This author used a lot of African mythology and folklore, which I feel like made the story such a refreshing read. This is the start of a series and I have plans on finishing this series. It's dual POV, but occasionally we get another perspective sprinkled throughout this story, and I think having that extra POV just really strengthened this story and just made it so much more vast and really made you feel connected to this world. Okay, so these last two books, like I said earlier, are going to be tied for first place because I cannot choose between the two of them. I can't, and I'm not going to. But the first one I want to mention is The Book Thief by Marcus Zozak. This book destroyed me. This book follows our main character, Liesel, and she finds her life changed when she unearths a single object in the snow. It is the gravedigger's handbook left there by accident at her brother's funeral, and it is her first act of book thievery. But these are dangerous times. After Liesel's foster family hides a Jewish man in their basement, Liesel's world is both opened up and closed down. It is 1939, Nazi Germany. The country is holding its breath. Death has never been busier and will become busier still. This book is just beautiful. Everybody should read this book. Every single person should read this book. And I think what just makes this book top tier is the perspective that it's told by. So it's told by death. I don't think that's a spoiler because it's literally in the synopsis and, you know, on page 1. But this book being told by death is so unique, so beautiful that I feel like if it had been told by any other perspective, I don't think it would have hit as hard. What I love about this book is you really have to follow along with the book. I listened to the audiobook as well, but having some of the drawings that are in here and some of the page breaks in here, they're just so beautiful and so unique that I do think you just need to feel submerged into this story, and that was my experience with this. I laughed, I cried, I sobbed, I was happy, I was devastated. I mean, this book is an emotional roller coaster, but it is a beautiful emotional roller coaster. I think that all of the characters in here were to die for. This is a book that will always stick with me. I read this book on my anniversary weekend. We were down in South Florida, sitting on the pool deck with a nice little beachfront view, and here I was reading The Book Thief, bawling my eyeballs out. I mean, it was worth it. I'm so happy that I read this book then. I will always hold the memories with this book near and dear. And this book is just so beautiful and so amazing. And it truly is something that everybody should read. This book will always and forever be a 5-star read. Now, the last book, which is tied for first place, is a completely different book on the other side of the scale. But I guess it just shows my two different tastes in reading. The Book Thief shares first place with The Lies I Tell by Julie Clark. This book follows a con artist. She's very particular about the people that she targets. So she screws over this girl named Kat Roberts, who has been waiting 10 years for the woman who uprooted her life to return. And now Meg is back and Kat is determined to be the one to expose her. But as the two women grow closer, Kat's long-held assumptions begin to crumble, leaving Kat to wonder who Meg's true target is. I just think that this book was so freaking good. It was twisty, it was turny. I really had a lot of fun with the dialogue. I believe I gave this book 4.5 stars or 5. Honestly, I mean, at this moment, it feels like it was a 5-star read. I wasn't really enjoying Kat's chapters as much. There was just something about those chapters that I couldn't quite like put a finger on. I still loved Meg's chapters. I loved Meg's motives for the things that she would do and that you got to see those things on page. And I think that's what makes this book so amazing. You follow her reasons and her motives why. We aren't just told those things. You know, we are very much shown and witnessing these things firsthand. When everything starts to kind of get pieced together throughout the story, you're like, ah, okay, I like this. I am digging this story. This shares the top spot in 2024 for me. So these were my top books of 2024. Let me know if you've read any of these books that I talked about here today. What was one of your top books of 2024? Thank you guys so much for watching this video, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.